Welcome to Marketing State of Mind, the podcast where clarity meets visibility. I'm Lynn Colbot, strategist and systems whisperer, here to unpack the mindset behind your marketing moves. Whether you're launching, scaling, or starting over, let's find the choices that actually feel like you. Welcome to A Marketing State of Mind, and today's guest is Richard Levy, a global marketing leader who's guided some of the world's most recognizable brands, GE, Santander, and MoneyGram, and now helps businesses worldwide grow through his company, Sophia Marketing. He's a rare blend of strategist and practitioner known for reversing negative trends and building teams that deliver. Richard, welcome.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
You are welcome. So that was kind of my overall high-level view, but now why don't you tell us more about what you do and what lights up your day?
Yeah. So I have spent, goodness me, around 20 years in marketing and business generally. And as you say, that's working for some rather large companies and also some much smaller ones as well. So it's sort of been the big and then the sort of the startup. And at the beginning of last year, so what's that, about 18 months ago, give or take, I decided to opening up Sophia Marketing, which is a marketing consultancy, and there's three arms to it, really. There's teaching, so I teach at Cambridge 1 day a month, which is really rewarding. I do a lot of mentoring globally, so I mentor people starting off in their businesses, or at the other end of the spectrum, CMOs deep into businesses. So it covers the whole lot. And then about 70% of what I do is going into small and medium-sized businesses who know they need to do some marketing, but they just don't know how or where to start or what the right measurements are, or how much they need to spend or what they should look for. And I just get a lot of satisfaction from that because I am myself a small business, and therefore I can tell people what I've learned through the years plus what I'm applying myself.
I really love that. I love that you do the mentorship component, and I love that your approach is to kind of come in and guide companies, because there are so many business owners that have kind of that basic grasp on what needs to be done, or on the technology, or on the tech stack they need, but what they need in addition to that is someone to guide them and say, okay, well, this is the way it works for other companies. This is the way I suggest for you. So when you start working with a company like that, like a company struggling to figure out what they're doing, let's say for their long-term branding or their long-term marketing, how do you help them? Like, how do you guide them? Or maybe I should rephrase and say, what is your first steps with them, bringing them into the process and helping them understand what they're doing and what they could be doing better?
Mm. Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first thing we have to understand is what is the point of marketing. And for me, I'm fairly regimented about that. The point of marketing is to bring in additional incremental business and to retain customers we have. So there should be a financial metric against it. If not, I'm not quite sure why we're doing it. So I'm very big on saying this is not about shares, likes, comments, impressions. For me, that's a little bit sort of vanity metrics. It makes us feel good. But if it doesn't bring in the dollars and the cents or the pounds and the pence, then actually what was the point of doing it? So we start off with a financial goal in mind. Now, that then becomes interesting of what are we actually trying to achieve and what do we classify marketing as being? So I've always looked at marketing, and this is the way I've practiced it, that the communication aspect of it, so the Meta, the LinkedIn, the Instagram, whatever way you want to put it, that comes right at the end. So I talk to businesses and say, okay, let's just go back to the basics here. Who are we? Why are we playing in a particular space? And then who are we targeting within that? So for me, I'm very clear in my business, if I can relate it to that, that my target audience are SMEs. So therefore, I am not contacting Unilever, Procter and Gamble, Coca-Cola, and Microsoft and saying, "Hey, I'm Richard. Can I help you?" That's just not who I'm targeting because they have 500 people doing that. Not
Mm.
they don't need me. So now I've decided I'm going to target the SMEs. Then I decide, well, what do I look like from a positioning point of view? What makes me stand out? What makes me different from the other 250 marketing consultants that are also doing the same thing? And so what I would suggest to people is look at your business objectively, and there's a little test you can do and it's three C's is what I'm offering what the customer wants, okay, which is really crucial. Am I doing it better than the competition in at least one aspect? And is it something as a company I can do? So the first two are not so difficult. Is it something the customer wants? Is it something does the customer? The third bit is what can I do that my competition can't? Or what am I better at? And so let me again come back to my example just because it's practical. I say, look, I've done it for 20 years, so I know the theory. I've been educated at London School of Economics and London Business School, plus I've gone and done it. And therefore I have the theory plus the practice, and very few other people can say that. So therefore there's a positioning of, well, why should I choose Richard? I get the best of both worlds. And this is what I would urge anyone to look at for their own business. And then you say, well, how do I price myself? And there's different ways you can do that. What's the customer experience? How do I distribute it? Am I going direct from a website or am I in retail stores? I'm just thinking there's a lot of different ways we can distribute it. And then finally, when you've worked all that out, then I would move on to the communication side. And the communication side is really, there's one golden rule of it in marketing, which sounds so simple and yet we get it wrong so often, is that you, as in the business owner, are not the customer. So I might,
Mm.
well, watch Netflix on a Friday night, read the Sunday Times over the weekend, and I don't know, go for long walks with a dog. But I am not my target market. My target market may do very, very different things. And therefore, the understanding of the customer. So, for example, there is a segment of people on TikTok. There's a segment of people on Meta. There's a segment of people on Instagram. They may or may not overlap, unless or YouTube or at tube stations. So let's assume there isn't an overlap. It's very important that we reach our customer where they are. And I'm very big on saying to people, you have to take your personal bias out of it because we all tend to have a lot of personal bias. You just got to move that. And then you should be in a good position. So that's basically the methodology that I take all my companies through um, to make sure they're in a good position before they start communicating. Because, if your price is wrong or your proposition doesn't make sense, you can communicate and do all the advertising you want in the world. But if it doesn't work for people who are receiving it, then it's a bit of a waste of money.
I love that. I love the towards the end, the last line you said, taking your personal bias out of that.
Mm,
And I mean, I don't know. There's that exercise where you get a company to or a small business owner to make the persona of their ideal client. and
mm,
and it's
mm,
always everybody groans, but it's like
yeah.
really like I just really love the way you said that. It's taking that element of yourself out of it or what you want
Mm,
your ideal customer to be, because who's actually buying it may not be who you think it is. There's a company I work with and they want their ideal customer to be these young under 30 affluent buyers, but it actually happens to
mm,
be that
mm,
everybody there is over 55
mm, mm,
but and retired with lots of money. So there's always this like banging our heads together going, no, it's older. No, it's younger. It's like, it's older. What you want versus what it is. So then, I mean,
mm,
that
mm,
kind of leads us into talking about data and collecting data and what I see sometimes, and I don't know if you see the same thing, is that companies will act on, okay, well, we need to get more likes. Or like, and I know you
mm,
had said like the social media elements at the end, and what I do tends to be a lot of that social media stuff. So I kind of have my fingers in it. And it's always like, we need to get more views, we need to get more likes, we need to, and like hyper focused on metrics. And metrics are super important. But I find sometimes, and I think the expression is they lose the plot of
Mm, mm.
what they're doing and why they're doing. So how do you when you're working with a company and you get to the point where like, okay, we're going to really dive into your social media and how you're posting and your website and all those little tiny bits of data. How do you leverage the data that's there and how what it's telling you versus the actions that you take? I don't know if that question makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. And I'm going to give a real example of something that happened to me that I think hopefully people can relate to. I was working with a client, doing some marketing consultancy with them, and I have to get the train from London, which is in the sort of south of the UK, to their offices, which are in the north of the UK. We have a system in the UK for trains where it's really expensive before 9:30 in the morning because that's when there's the business hours. Then it gets cheaper. And I got this train at 8:30 in the morning, so it's actually quite expensive, and it's absolutely empty. Right, so there's no one on it. So I put this post on LinkedIn, and it really was an instinctive, not thought out post. And it just said, here's a picture of the carriage. It's empty. This doesn't make sense because at 9:30, everyone's going to pour onto it. Same journey. And they're all going to be standing because the price tickets are so much cheaper. And at 8:30, it's empty. And then I said, the cost of running a train, blah, 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 doesn't vary very much depending who's on it. And I literally wrote this thing and sent it out on LinkedIn. And I got something like 500,000 impressions, right? I mean, it just literally went viral. Whatever the definition of going viral is, this post went viral. Okay. And probably my least thought about post I've ever written. As in, I wasn't messing around with it. I just wrote my thoughts, took a picture and sent it. It got something like, 12,000 likes, 8,000 reshares, all this kind of ridiculous stuff, right? Now, let me ask you a question. How much extra business as a marketing consultant did I get out of that post? The answer is zero. Absolutely zero. Because my post was not really related to anything I specifically do. I could argue it's about pricing, but it would just have to be on a subject that people felt very passionately about. But they didn't relate my expertise to the post I put out there. So I can come home to you and say, hey, Lynn, I've done an amazing thing. I've got 500,000 likes. But as a business owner, I'd look at that and say, so what? What did it do for revenue and what did it do for profit? So my big argument here is that when you're out there, it's about quality, not quantity. And just be careful. We live in an era, in the not that I was around, I hasten to add, but in the 1960s, there were comments such as, oh, I waste 50% of my marketing budget. I just don't know what 50% it is. Quite a famous quote. That now is a really unacceptable comment because we're going to say, but surely we can measure everything. Everything can be measured. It can, but just because we can measure stuff doesn't mean that's the right stuff to measure. And that for me is very, very important. So I would be careful of what I call vanity metrics, which is your likes. Shares is more an interesting one because that's people taking content they like and sharing it. So I think that's interesting. Impressions. Anyone who comes to me and gives impressions as a metric, I'll be honest, I think they're a crap marketeer. All right? I'm just going to say it. They don't know what they're doing, right? Because impressions, it's like, when you sit there watching TV, I don't know, maybe you watched television last night. Let's say you watched television last night and I said to you, Caitlin, tell me some of the adverts you saw. I would be amazed if you could come back with any. Okay.
Yep.
And so, but the TV company are going to go, oh, 28,000 people were watching at that time, but they weren't watching at that time. They were going out and making themselves, because we're English, a cup of tea. So that's what we do. Or they go to the bathroom, or they check their phones, or they whatever. So I think we need to be careful with what we're really measuring. And I'm going to come back to my earlier point. If it doesn't, either in the short term or the long term, impact your financial metrics, I'm not entirely sure what the point of doing it was. And that really is the metric that counts. And I remember, and I'll finish the point here, but I remember once being in a meeting with someone, meetings you never forget. And I said, "Oh, our revenue's gone up X." And they went, "But what about our profit?" And I said, "I'm not sure." And he said, "Well, you come back to me when you can tell me what it's actually made to the bottom line of this business." And it's that kind of discipline that we need on marketing. Revenue is an indicator, likes, impressions, they're indicators, but they're not the bottom line. And I think we need to be really careful because we can measure everything. And finally on this point, be careful with people using data because a lot of people use it for their own purposes. So a television company can say to me, 28,000 people watching at that point. Technically, they're correct. The TV was on in 28,000 households. But the reality is, as you know, and I know during commercial break, that's not really the truth. So always question where that data source is coming from.
Yeah, I 100% agree because data, I mean, a lot of times in reports when I'll read somebody who has used maybe a different team before they come to me, it's like, well, I don't think this
Mm.
means what you think it means.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of that. And even just whether it's on the positive or negative, sometimes I'll look on the back end for Google Analytics and I'll say, oh my gosh, like people are spending 3 to 4 minutes on this page on your website, which to me is fantastic. And they're like, yeah, it's not very long. I'm like, I think the industry average is
Mm.
11
Mm.
seconds. So it's like you're actually doing really well. So knowing what the numbers are, but then again, that's not their job. Their job is they're going to be doing staffing. They're going to be writing employment contracts. They're going to be making sure they have stuff
Yeah.
in and stuff going out. And that's where you come in to be like, okay, well, these numbers, not so much. These numbers, a little bit. And this number, 100%. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, we're there to question data and to always question where it's coming from and
Yeah.
what the motive of that person may be. Um, and I agree with you about the Google and everyone has a motivation for telling you. And stats can be very accurate or desperately misleading, and they're still
Yeah.
accurate, but they can be very helpful or very unhelpful depending on what you're using them for. So just question it.
Well,
That's all I would say.
one of my favorite, I took stats at university and it was not my favorite course. And if I can remember correctly, when one of the things that they taught us to think about stats per what you were saying was if somebody tells you 100% of cars that are yellow do not get into accidents, you'd be like, "Wow, that's amazing." Like there no yellow cars get into accidents, but they followed up to say, "But there's only 3 yellow cars in your province."
There you
And
go.
they're all in the garage because they're
Yeah,
classic
yeah,
cars painted yellow, and the drivers are driving a certain way and only bring them out for certain events. So the data is accurate, but you need that perspective to
yeah.
understand. Yeah. So that to me was fun.
It's a great example. Um, and also how the question is phrased can be. I remember once hearing a survey where it said, 90% of people don't believe X, Y, Z. But when you actually go behind what the question said, it was a really leading question of,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
what's the exact number of X? And they don't know the exact number, and then that gets turned into 90% of people don't know something. You're like, well, that's not quite an accurate representation of it. So, lots to question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and so just talking about, stats and numbers, of course, then my brain kinda goes a little bit into AI and,
Mm,
everybody's like, "AI what the heck is happening? What's going on?" Every week, something changes, and with what you're doing, AI is coming in hard and fast as in my opinion, I see it as a huge supporting role because much of just like we talked about in the beginning of this conversation, it's a lot about heart and feeling and understanding much more than even the owner understands about something themselves, paired with data. So my question is, how do you see, looking into a crystal ball or maybe things you're seeing currently, how do you see AI in in the marketing role with you in today or coming up?
Yeah, it's a really topical point, isn't it? Because it is absolutely everywhere. Look, I have a view that the world goes through various sort of substantial phases. With the industrial revolution, what was this, where everything changes, and that's why it's called a revolution. When the internet came in, the world was never, it's quite unimaginable to imagine the world pre-internet now. So the
Yeah.
internet has become like oxygen. We just breathe it, we don't even notice it. And I think AI is following the same pattern. And that means that um, my strong advice would be for people, SMEs, small businesses, to either understand it yourself or speak to someone like me or you, Lynn, who is studying it and looking at it and understanding. I think you need knowledge. So if you have the time, go and do it yourself. That's more challenging. If you want an easier way, give me an email or give you an email and I'm sure we can explain it. I think the key here will be that for marketing, I don't think it will replace the top strategic thinking. I just don't, because I think to your point, that's heart and mind and the human brain and the creativity, etc. I think remains key. I would think that middle bit of it though is under serious threat, and I think people need to adapt. That's not what we want to hear, so people then tend to turn away from it. But I think there's a reality. So let me give you an example. I was talking to a very intelligent guy about this morning. If you look at the top companies of the world, they're still going to need people. They still need people in their marketing departments. Also, what AI has done is democratize advertising for small and medium sized businesses. Because actually, I could go to someone like Meta, say, this is my target market, this is what I'm going to try and say. They'll create 50 adverts for me. I'm going to say yes. They'll find the right people and they'll tell me what adverts are doing better than the other ones. And they'll drop the low performing ones and they'll keep the high performing ones. So the role there at the bottom means that you and I, as small businesses, actually have access to the same platforms as the Unilevers and the Coca-Colas. Isn't that brilliant? Well, I would worry us about those companies in the middle that, are not sophisticated in marketing and they're almost potentially they're going to have to do it themselves and they're going to have to use AI. And so my strong advice to them is that AI isn't going to replace the people, but I think use it. I think the people who will do well are the marketeers who know how to use AI and use it, to your point, Lynn, as the support function. Um, because at the moment, and this will change, I'm seeing a lot of AI that I struggle to realize it's AI, but I'm seeing a lot of AI that within a minute I think, and this lacks any kind of humanity or personality. It's just someone somewhere has put it forward. And we've got to be really careful in marketing that we don't take the cheap and easy option because it won't resonate with our consumer. And therefore, if it's of low quality, rubbish that is produced fast is still rubbish. And so we've just got to be really careful that we look at it objectively and say, is this what I want my brand to be associated with? Is this the quality I expect? What does it say about me? Don't let AI can help you, but I've used an 80-20% rule where AI can do 80% of it, but the 20%, the inputs have to be you and the checking it over and the amendments have to be you. So use it as a friend, but I wouldn't use it as a substitute.
I agree 100% with that, that it is a great support tool and that allows us to be more efficient. Like you said, those ads, absolutely. But yeah, it can't be you. Only you can be you.
Yeah. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
so yeah, it ends up being and I agree. It's gonna be, I think, a huge supporting role, and like you said, you need to know how to use it. So it's just going, "Write me a blog about marketing," well, that's gonna
Yeah.
that's gonna be
Yeah.
pretty generic right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I,
big
I agree. And I think content, I'm a big believer in valuable, interesting content. And I want people, and I'm not there yet, I'm really going to put that out there, but I want people to come to my website and be excited about, has there been an update? Has there been new content? Has he published something? That's the key. And AI is not going to do that for you. You need to think about, what are the trends? Where's it going? And what's my personal view on it? I want a view on it. A view that is Richard, not a view that is a machine. And because that's how humans interact with each other. So I totally agree with you. I think it's a great best friend, a support act, but don't let it be you, because it's not.
Well, that is an excellent way to close out our discussion. Although I could still keep talking about this and keep going. So, Richard, this was incredible. Thank you so much. And for listeners who want to dive deeper in your work or connect with you, or maybe just share a little bit about what you're working on, where should listeners go to find you?
Yeah, firstly, thank you to you, Lynn, for giving me the opportunity. It was a great conversation. So sincerely, thank you. I'm on LinkedIn. So Richard Levy, Levy1, the number one. Someone got there before me with the name, so I then had to put the number one at the end of it. But hopefully that's recognizable. Or please email me at Richard, Richard, Levy, Levy, at Sophera, which is Sophera marketing.co.uk. Feel free to email any questions. The other thing I should mention, Lynn, is that I do a monthly newsletter,
Oh,
which
nice.
is, yeah, it's the sort of one big marketing question that someone has asked me that month that I think would be helpful for people to, they're probably thinking it. And I've actually been relatively inundated this month with questions. So I'm going to have to pick the one that goes out. But if anybody wants to join that newsletter, there's no selling in it. It's purely, this was the question I was asked, this is the answer I'd give. Please email me and just say, yeah, add me to the newsletter list, and I will, with pleasure, add you in, and you can join the few thousand people that get it every month.
That's awesome. I love that idea. So again, thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone for listening. And I hope that you're able to take these insights and put them into your plan and your actions as you move forward in your business. Thank you again, Richard.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Marketing State of Mind. If this sparks something, hit subscribe and share it with someone navigating visibility too. Want to work together or see how I help vision-driven brands get clear and seen? Head to cyberprarmy.com or connect with me on LinkedIn, Lynn Kolpa. Until next time, sit in the clarity and remember, visibility isn't about shouting. It's about saying the right thing in the right state of mind.